I read the top 5 modern sports manga to find out how good this genre is right now. I'm not talking about Slam Dunk, Prince of Tennis, or Haikyu. I'm talking about manga that have actually released within the last few years. If you spend any time online, then you've probably heard about how good Blue Lock is. Well, I found 4 other manga that might just give Blue Lock a run for its money. But you know, I'm a believer that you can't appreciate the good stuff without seeing the bad stuff. So, I've balanced things out by adding the lowest rated modern sports manga to this list. And if I had any regrets in making this video, it'd be from reading this one. My name's Anish, and welcome to Manga Niche. This is a channel dedicated to helping you find something new to read. Now let's get right into it. First off, out of all the manga on this list, let me tell you about the one I'd be most excited to see have an anime adaptation. With a really unique art style, Wandance does a great job at immediately capturing a reader's attention to show off some really cool dance moves. Wandance is the story of Koboku Kutani, a student who's embarrassed about his stuttering speech impediment. One day, he sees another student named Hikari Wanda dancing without a care for who sees her. He watches her in a trance and wonders if he too can feel the same freedom that she does. This is the story of the quiet Kabo battling it out in his school's dance team and exploring a world that lets him be the loudest one in the room without doing any talking. And hopefully along the way, he can win over Wanda too. Alright, so honestly, Wandance was initially really hard for me to connect with because I have zero knowledge about dancing. Obviously, sports have a lot of motion to them, but we can usually use our awareness of how the sports are played to connect the dots in a manga and picture the movements that happen. But as I kept reading, there were more and more times of me just going, holy shit, that's really cool. Wandance does a great job at showcasing a variety of different dance styles and tying those in with the personality types of its characters. By doing that, I feel like Wandance had a unique way of fleshing out its cast while introducing the reader to how big of a world dancing really is. And that connection was my guide to following along with all the dance moves and really appreciate what I was seeing. But in case you're really worried about being clueless at dancing, the author's got you covered. He uses Kabo's dance lessons as a way to teach the basics of dancing, and on top of that, always puts in songs the characters themselves are dancing to. If you're able to adapt to the way that the dancing is portrayed, then I'm sure that Wandance will be a big hit for you. And speaking of big hits, this next one definitely hit my feelings the hardest. When I started reading Medalist, I was vibing with the first few chapters, so I mentioned the name to my friend, and his first reaction was, "Is that the worm manga?" Well, he wasn't wrong. Medalist is about a 10-year-old girl who really likes worms and a 26-year-old man who's scared of dogs. Together, the two of them take on the world of figure skating. Alright, hear me out. Inori grew up watching her talented older sister figure skate, but unlike her older sister, Inori was constantly barraged with insults all her life by everyone from her classmates to even her own mother for being too clumsy or too dumb to be good at anything. I mean, the mother pretty much treats Inori like this.
If you're saying I play favorites, you're wrong. I love all my children equally. I don't care.
Inori.
It would be normal to crack under this kind of pressure, but Inori was given a second chance at life when she meets Tsukasa, who's one of the best ice dancers in Japan, who transforms her from an ugly duckling to someone who'll keep you on the edge of your seat as she tries to nail down the hardest moves. Though, this is where I think people overlook Medalist by thinking that it's just a story about children competing and thinking that it's probably just for kids. But the thing is, when you open a chapter of Medalist, you'll never know what emotion you're going to get hit with. In the span of a single chapter, you could go from laughing at the character dynamics to being wowed by the surprisingly intense competitions to feeling suddenly invested in the struggles of a random 9-year-old girl who dresses like a cat. At the heart of it, Medalist shows off how beautiful of a sport figure skating really is. The artwork is stunning and will have you cheering for Inori in the same way as the audience at the competitions, especially as you see her grow from relying on worms for comfort to putting in the hard work to create her own happiness. If you're looking for a fast-paced shonen, this might not be the one for you. But what you will get is a touching story that fills you with a feeling that with enough practice and patience, miracles can become a reality. But if you do want a fast-paced shonen, this next one's perfect for you. What if I told you that this horse is this girl, or that this horse is this girl? Well, welcome to the world of Musume. In case you aren't aware, Musume is basically an anime version of The Crown for horse racing. By that I mean, it's a retelling of real life. Okay, maybe not exactly, but it is literally based off actual historical horse racing, to the point that if you wanted to see spoilers, you could just look up the historical race results and see who won. If you think this series is just about some cute girls doing some cute races, then get that thought out of here, because this is just about as close as you can get to a battle manga without any fighting. I mean, there are girls pretty much going Super Saiyan. The girls in this story run to live and live to run. This is a universe where these girls running is the #1 sport in the world and is broadcast everywhere from Times Square to your granddad's house. This ain't no Fox News, this is cute girls running. Musume is an extremely popular multimedia series. Right now, we're talking about the manga, which is about Oguri Cap, a gray horse from the countryside. She's here to beat the superstition that gray-coated horses are weaker and have her own Cinderella story. The setting of this manga was extremely competition-focused, and honestly, I respect it. It was super fun to sit back and read a story without much downtime between the actual sport events. But don't get me wrong, that doesn't mean there's no character development. because ultimately when you lose, you just feel like shit. And these girls don't want to feel like shit. They want the other girls to eat shit. So when times get tough, we see Oguri and her rivals explore what their motivations are for running and use that to level up their skills. I won't say that this is the next Shakespeare, but I would suggest this for anyone looking for a fun, high energy read. So now, I'd like to thank the sponsor of this video. Just kidding, this is my first video, nobody's going to sponsor this. But if you do enjoy the content I'm making, please consider subscribing, it'll mean a lot to me. Now, I did promise you one bad manga, and oh boy, I did not enjoy reading this manga about rugby. Though to fully explain it, let me rewind a little. The Rugby World Cup is considered the third largest sports event in the world. Historically, rugby has been dominated by non-Asian teams. One of those powerhouses, South Africa, was considered a favorite for the 2015 World Cup. When they went up against Japan in the group stage, it was a David and Goliath moment. The betting odds were stacked 80-1 against Japan. The Japanese coach himself even said that the expectations were only to get a pat on the back for a good effort. But in what was named the best match moment of the tournament and one of the greatest sporting upsets of all time, the Japanese team delivered a spectacular last-minute score to defeat South Africa. And that energy was what set the stage for Japan hosting the World Cup in 2019. Now, I want you to take that energy and bottle it. Feelings of being an underdog, overcoming the odds, and the power of teamwork immediately come to mind. So why is it that when the Shonen Jump team got their hands on this bottle, all we got was crap? This manga was put out right before the 2019 Rugby World Cup and was cancelled immediately after it, meaning it existed just to cash in on the trend. Which would be fine, but this manga takes that bottle of feelings and chucks it right out the window. Beast Children gives us a story where the protagonist has no goals in mind and no challenges to overcome. Sakura is honestly just a normal kid whose biggest problem in life is that he's never had a chance to play rugby until high school. And that's totally fine. Plenty of stories start with the main character as a beginner. Just look at something like Baby Steps, which tells you in the title that the protagonist slowly grows as a player. But in Baby Steps, we see the main character grow his ambitions from just wanting to get fit to becoming the next Federer. But in Beast Children, Sakura has no ambition and his only personality trait is being annoyingly obsessed with his rival, who honestly doesn't really like him. And that could be a fine motivator, but his rivalry is never really a relevant point for Sakura to try and improve. I think the rivalry really showcases what the characters in the story are like. And by that I mean, they're not fleshed out in the slightest. For example, this guy is one of the characters we see the most, and the only thing I know about him is that he likes to kick balls. And above all that, even worse,
why is there only one rugby match in the whole manga, and why is it so boring?
Just to leave a happier note, I wanted to tell you about the one thing I thought Beast Children did okay at. I kept seeing reviews online from people who actually play rugby who said the manga did a realistic job at showing how the sport is practiced and played, but even that couldn't save the train wreck of a manga. Just so we can avoid bad manga like that, leave a comment down below for what your favorite sports manga is. But after a manga like that, I definitely need something refreshing, and Blue Box is the ultimate palate cleanser, but not in the way that you would think. Blue Box is a sports manga that isn't about the sport, it's actually a cute romance story. I can already feel the question marks in your head, so hear me out, because as soon as I picked this manga up, I just couldn't put it down. You might think that a sports manga not about the sports is like an action manga without the fighting, but the difference here is the depth of the world. If you take the sports away from a sports story, all that's left is a bunch of high schoolers. But a good action story will be able to excite your imagination through a unique setting that goes beyond just the fighting. So a sports setting usually needs more than just sports. And this sports manga is all about Taiki's progression in romance. All he wants to do is win over the girl of his dreams, but the issue is that he's a no-name badminton player and she's the star of the basketball team. Now, before you skip ahead because I said this one's about romance, hold up and let me cook. The author still makes sure that the sports are in plain sight and does a great job making badminton look really freaking cool. And I haven't even mentioned the biggest twist in this setup yet, which is that Taiki and his crush Shinatsu actually live together. While this probably sounds like your typical ecchi rom-com setup, Taiki is actually really respectful of Shinatsu's boundaries, and he thinks that she deserves a man who is just as successful as she is. So he uses her presence as a motivator to keep getting better and better at badminton. When tournaments come around, we see Taiki's competitive drive in full throttle as he tries to surpass expectations and beat his rivals. But the lighthearted nature of this manga can also cause some pacing issues and stall out the plot. There were so many moments when a chapter would end on a cliffhanger and you'd be thinking, okay, this is it, the romance is about to go crazy, only for a silly twist to happen and everything gets delayed. But because there's already over 100 chapters out, I had the luxury of binging through some of the lows of this manga so that I could reach the highs that made this manga impossible for me to put down. So if you let this story marinate, I'm sure that you'll find something refreshing in Blue Box and enjoy it just as I did. This video is getting kind of long, so I'll get right to the point. If you haven't read Blue Lock yet, then hurry up and go read it. The banger levels are off the chart. Blue Lock is the battle royale of sports manga. The 300 best Japanese high school soccer players are called to a facility called the Blue Lock and fight it out to determine who has the most potential to win the World Cup for Japan. But the selection criteria for how the players become the best is the unique part. To best describe this, let me compare this to the Ted Lasso approach.
I think that you might be so sure that you're 1 in a million that sometimes you forget that out there you're just 1 of 11. If you just figure out some way to turn that me into us.
Blue Lock says screw this and tells the competitors that if they can't carry the game on their own, then their skills ain't shit. I mean, some of the characters will literally see their teammates as enemies and steal the ball from them just so they can be the one to score instead. The best players know they're the best and use their ego to take control of the field and play the game as they want to. If you can't evolve to overwhelm both your teammates and your opponents, then get out of here. But this is where the genius of Blue Lock comes in. For a story so focused on winning above all else, it does a great job of making everyone pretty much feel like a loser. Throughout each round of Blue Lock, these characters' egos get inflated more and more with confidence in their abilities, but as soon as they hit a wall is when their egos start to pop, and the players who succeed are the ones who can cope with their losses and use that to propel themselves to even greater heights. And it was easy to connect with these characters as we saw their evolutions. The format of Blue Lock makes it so that instead of only one winner, there's actually 5. Thanks to this, I was constantly paying attention to who the standout players were and trying to predict who would be there at the end. I will say that at first, Blue Lock was a little slow to start, but as soon as it picked up speed, it never let off the throttle and I was hooked ever since. For anyone who's a fan of shonen, this is a must read. Wow, it was super fun to read these and I can't wait to read more. Let me know down below what genre you want me to check out next. See you next time.